Randy Livingston, born April 2nd, 1975. Today's feature is one that shows great illustration of just how much life circumstances, even more than actual skill, can affect a player's journey to the NBA, and should he get there, determine what's to become of said player. Basketball, as you know, is a physical sport played using a tool in the body that can be enhanced through targeted muscle development, is unpredictable, ages, and most importantly, breaks down at some point due to multiple reasons. The game is unlike poker or gaming or race car driving, bowling, or golf. You can't play this one and be effective late in your 40s and even 60s. It requires more than sitting behind a wheel and mental precision or a two-step arm swing that, like golf, you can do later into your life. I say that to say this. For reasons I'll explain through 3 growth stunts, Randy Livingston didn't become exactly the basketball player he envisioned himself becoming when he said this.
I had my weirdest dream that I was Michael, Magic, and Bird all in one. You want to be all 3 in one.
He was everything you could ask for in a high school player, even having top publications follow him around and document his Louisiana upbringing as the #1 overall high school player that won the Parade Player of the Year twice as a junior and senior in 1992 and 93, along with Jason Kidd and Rasheed Wallace. Those two went on to become high NBA draft picks and have great professional careers, while Randy went on to become a victim of circumstance, basketball journeyman, and some would say a disappointment as it pertains to his sport. Here are 3 reasons Randy Livingston's growth was stunted. Salute to chosen handles for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. I remember having the NBA D-League as a distant thought in my mind when thinking about possible landing spots professionally, and I remember the name Randy Livingston constantly showing up. I would say to myself, man, he's a good player. Why isn't he in the NBA or getting call-ups like the other guys? It seemed like he was there for years and years until one point I remember thinking he's never going to get that chance since he hasn't yet. Now I understand exactly why. In high school, Livingston was a totally different player than I saw in the D-League. He was explosive, physically already NBA ready, and mentally, if you watch his documentary, he seemed like a 30-year-old man in high school, how advanced he appeared when he spoke and even carried himself. A 6'4" point guard for the Isidore Newman School, he became a McDonald's All-American, won 3 consecutive state championships, and was the prized hometown recruit for LSU. What's up, guys? Become a patron now. There you can find exclusive workouts, move breakdowns, and tutorials to help your development in certain areas. Also, receive consulting each week with me where I help break down your game and build you into the player you want to become. Patreon.com/stuntedgrowth for more. Link is in the description. Enjoy the video. Stunt number 1, before it could even begin. Injury. Let's begin with this because it's literally the determining storyline of Livingston's career that took him from a possible Hall of Famer like his counterparts Jason Kidd and possibly Rasheed Wallace to a name most times forgotten by the mass of YouTube basketball story writers looking for the most interesting stories to enhance their channels. But I remember how good Randy was and how dominant he could have been had he not had the injury history he had in the untimely points in his journey he had them. Before his freshman season at LSU even began, Randy was working at a basketball camp in Michigan in July 1993 and tore his ACL and would have to sit out the 93-94 college season, which was to be his first. One that had many expectations for him to come in and put up numbers similar to Jason Kidd's and possibly even become a one-and-done player. ACL injuries, as you know, can haunt a player's entire career, and if not repaired correctly and rehabbed diligently, can change that player, making him into a totally different person. That's today. Think about in the early 90s. He came back for the 94-95 season and began to show why the college and NBA world was waiting to see him on the floor. He was averaging 14 points and one of the best assist men in the country in his first 16 games at 9.4 assists a game. On January 31st, 1995, he fractured his kneecap and was not only done for the season, but it was the last time he'd play at that level compared to his competition ever again. Just for some perspective, Jason Kidd, a guy he was literally on the same level as in high school, was the number 2 overall pick in 1994, averaging 16 points and 9 assists. A year later, Randy was averaging almost the exact numbers, slightly below in scoring and slightly above in assists. Who knows what could have been had these injuries not happened to him, but I think it's safe to assume the possibilities, seeing as this was now repeat levels both were on and Randy was equivalent to Kidd, if not better. Keep in mind, he's coming off ACL surgery doing this, with Kidd being fully healthy. Could he have been better than Jason, who is regarded as one of the best point guards ever? Well, it's absolutely possible. But those injuries didn't turn out well for him, and from then on, things were different. Stunt number 2, a few years too early. Randy Livingston, sadly, was just a few years too early for the window he could have caught that even though this event happened before his game-changing injuries, it's used to show the result of the times he was in and what could happen when you make the wrong decision. At the time, though, the decision to enroll in college and not make the jump to the pros seemed the correct one based on what history had shown up to that point. So let's break this down a bit. Randy graduated Newman Prep School in 1993. In 1962, Reggie Harding was the first player out of high school to be drafted into the league, although he had to play in a minor league for a year before being drafted again in 1963. In 1974, the NBA's competition, the ABA, had success drafting Moses Malone straight out of high school that made the NBA reconsider the process. Since 1975 to the time Randy was graduating, no high school prospect was taken in the NBA draft in the 18-year span. There were guys that entered but none taken, as at the time they were seen as not ready for that level of competition. Why was that? A lot had to do with names you may be familiar with in Darryl Dawkins and Bill Willoughby, who, in a year after Moses Malone in 1975, were the last high school players taken in the draft before Randy Livingston almost 20 years later. Neither Dawkins nor Willoughby were considered to have reached their full potential and was a huge reason NBA teams went away from taking high school players all the way up to 1995 when Kevin Garnett was taken and had success, making the process a lot more popular and believed in. Imagine Randy was 2 years younger and could have considered leaving for the league right after high school with KG, still with that confidence, swagger, explosion, potential, and injury-free. He could have truly been something special. But as history was written, that didn't happen, and he did go to college, was injured, and only played in 29 games in 2 seasons at LSU, causing him to slip to the bottom of the second round when he could have been a top 5 pick out of high school guaranteed. This led to him being a journeyman with no real home in the NBA and a future loss because he was simply before his time. Stunt number 3, a different person. And the final stunt, coming as a result of all that, was him being a completely different athlete after the knee injuries, along with age, the game moving on, and opportunity. He lost the explosion that allowed him to get by defenders, opening up lanes for his elite passing, and hindered his development as an offensive threat now that he couldn't use his physical dominance that he had as a high schooler against defenders. Then he'd just blow by you and finish above the rim or go through you with his strength and force you to foul him. After the injuries, he relied on his shooting more, which was never his strong suit, seeing as he never really had to use it on the high school level and the era he was in. He wasn't the same player anymore. Instead, he was a shell of what he was supposed to be, all while developing into a player that simply wasn't that great in any areas that could have made him stick with an NBA team. Over his 11 seasons, he played sparingly for a handful of games here and there, and although it says 11 seasons, it's really like 200 games, which is equivalent to more or less 2 seasons in the league. Most of his time, like mentioned, was spent in the D-League, where he became an MVP, won a title, and had his jersey retired by the Idaho Stampede, a far cry from where he was expected to see his jersey hanging as a high school superstar. All in all, Randy Livingston still had a great basketball journey that led him across the world and is esteemed in the circles that remember him. He's accomplished a lot and always stayed persistent and professional in how he carried himself. No, he didn't become a Hall of Fame guard like Jason Kidd, but his story is just as important a teaching tool that can be used just as effectively. Salute to him, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.